Hello, everybody. This is Stan Scott again, and we're doing a bonus podcast today, and we have a very special guest. So I want you to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you think this is helpful. Comment. We want to know what you think about this, but don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We have a very special guest today. I'm Stan Scott, by the way.
I'm Scott Konopasek.
And we do have a special guest. His name is Mike McGirr. Is it McGirr or McGear?
McGirr.
McGirr. Mike McGirr, he's a community activist living down in Bristol, Virginia, way out in the far west, right on the Tennessee border. Mike grew up on a regenerative farm in Massachusetts, and this experience sort of shaped a commitment to localized, equitable food systems. So Mike does a lot of work with food hubs and such, trying to make sure that local farmers have good distribution systems, they understand the local markets, and they understand how to expand those markets. Mike also has a degree in graphic design, and he's handled marketing campaigns for Fortune 100 companies. And as a bonus, he's trained as a chef. So maybe you can give us some recipes before it's all over there, Mike. This year, Mike served as the volunteer campaign manager for Cindy Green, a Democratic Party candidate who ran for the House of Delegates out in the 44th district, which is a district sort of around Bristol, Abingdon, right where the Tennessee, North Carolina, and Virginia borders sort of meet. And now he's running to be the chair of the Democratic Party of Virginia's Rural Caucus. And just real quick to explain, the state party has sort of some sub-organizations they call caucuses, and they're typically focused either on a policy area or on an identity, a demographic. So you have a women's caucus, you have a veterans caucus, you have a black caucus, and you have a rural caucus, which is focused on helping to elect Democratic candidates in rural parts of the state, which is important because a lot of these places are red. So, Mike, hello, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It's good to get to know you and be able to talk a little bit about what we're looking at and what our experience is here in the Commonwealth and how particular it is in Southwest Virginia. It's been an eye-opening experience working in this space, especially over the past 7-8 months with Cindy Green, right. Who I tried to talk her out of running. She asked me to. She was like, be my devil's advocate. And I'm like, all right. So for days and days and days, I would give her a list of reasons and lists of things to ponder. And, it's like, what's this going to do to your family? How secure are you about this with your job? It's like things that, just the core basic questions about safety and security. And then, like, what do you feel about people coming by your house and screaming at you or throwing shit at your house? And, she's like, I have 2 dogs in the front yard. Nobody bothers with that. I live on the top of a hill. I have drug addicts living in a shack across the street from me that I can't get the city to even come up and condemn. I don't worry about any of that. I mean, and yes, I mimic her all the time because she's got the most exquisite voice, and I've fallen in love with it over the last 8 months of being glued to the side. My husband is a little confused because sometimes I'm like, hey, I need that coffee. And, and he's like, what? So anyway.
Who is that?
Yeah. But it's go ahead. Ask me a question.
Yeah. So I've always thought of the Rural Caucus and the Democratic Party as being sort of oxymoronic. So, and I was a candidate also in this last election cycle in a district that many called a rural district. But I had really no interaction with anyone from the Rural Caucus, and I'm really not aware of too much of what they're doing or what they could be doing. So could you take a minute and talk about what the Rural Caucus does, and why you're running, why you want to lead this organization?
Sure. What they're doing is very little. And what they have done for, say, all the rural candidates, you were one of the 27 value pack, right?
Right.
So, you saw that from the inside. Did you get a donation or an endorsement from the Rural Caucus?
No, they'd never reached out to me at all.
No, surprise. Well, guess what? When Cindy filed, we called all the caucuses, and Cindy was the lucky one to call on the current chair of the Rural Caucus, who happens to be the chair of the Lee County Democratic Committee as well. And so she and a number of other, I think it was like Melody Cartwright, Yvonne Rohr. There were other people in the call, but they basically went to one of the very rare online meetings, and they're like, "Hey, we're candidates. We're rural candidates. Please endorse us like the other caucuses have," because they all had, and also we're rural candidates. We're rural candidates. How about a little bit of change in my hand over here so that I can do something, Zero? The answer was, we don't have a process for endorsing candidates. And Mel Cartwright was like, that is not true, because you endorsed me after I forced you when I ran in 2023. So what happened to that? Eventually they did create a caucus endorsement. They did endorse them, and then they selected a handful. I don't know how many. Cindy knows the number, but a handful of the rural candidates received $250 a pop.
Right.
So, thank you. However, when they continued in their experience, they were then invited to this rural retreat in Natural Bridge, and it turns out when you look at VPAP, if you're familiar, are you guys familiar with VPAP? I'm sure you are, right? You just go to VPAP. You can go to one of the multiple identities that Rural Caucus has in there. They've got a PAC, they've got a Roberta thing, they've got the Rural Caucus in Berry, they've got I don't know where it all. It's confusing why so many are there, but there is one thing that stands out. It's a $26,000 expense at Natural Bridge. So they spent $26,000 to invite a number of candidates to drive on their own dollar 5 hours to Natural Bridge, to pay for their own hotel room on top of that, and then to pay an admission fee on top of that, in order to get into something that was supposed to be a whole bunch of really well organized trainings and resource allocation. But there were even people, I think it was Mel, who were turned away. It's like, hey, I'm here, I have my own room, but I just don't have the $250 to pay for this right now. I spent it on gas and other stuff. She got kicked out. I mean, the chair themselves actually showed this candidate to the door who had already made that commitment. Who does that when somebody's made that commitment, right? And it just,
so they wanted their $250 back.
That's exactly right. It's circular, right? And then in their reporting in the last meeting, like the last, I don't know, next last meeting or the meeting before, they're like, oh, and this was our biggest fundraiser. I'm like, excuse me, what kind of a fundraiser are you talking about? No, you were extracting dollars from rural candidates. That's not a fundraiser. That's bullshit, right. And there's no reason that, like, you should be raising money the way that everybody raises money and providing it. It's backwards. It's currently set up in a backwards way, pay to play. And it's a social club at that. It's those who we like, those who we're interested in, pay to play, right? And they all kind of get into it.
So organizations sometimes are just very self-serving. They're in this for themselves. Other organizations have clients or a constituency that they try to serve in various ways.
Yeah.
What do you see the constituencies of the Rural Caucus being, and how would you serve those constituencies?
Were I to be elected?
Correct.
Yeah. Well, I think the constituency is all rural spaces in Virginia and the people who dwell within those rural spaces, the businesses that operate in the rural spaces, the farms that exist in the rural spaces. All of them are under pressure. All of them are under immense pressure for developers, for the changing landscape with the expansion of the energy systems that are necessary, the changes in clean energy. Nobody out here wants their rare, I mean, because we're mountain, right? Nobody out here wants their very expensive agricultural land that takes so much care, right, in these
Right.
circumstances to be covered in solar panels. And I don't blame them. I'm 100% for solarizing every roof, every municipal parking lot, every single place that we can possibly stick them. But don't put them on rural land and ruin our landscape. Like it's just, it flies in the face of reason.
Yeah.
Use industrial development land. I mean, industrial development authorities, I sit on the one in Bristol. We have so much land here. It's absolutely ridiculous. We have so many retail boxes that are just sitting empty because they can't seem to get anybody to come because there's no housing here. And, so I work in housing and building the Regional Workforce Housing Alliance for Southwest Virginia and Northeast Tennessee. We map to the MPO. So we see where all the infrastructure is and all those pieces. We need to map to those infrastructure spaces that are prepared. We need to be putting dense housing in those spaces so that we're not ruining our rural landscape, right? They're all along the 81 corridor. They're along the Lee Highway corridor. They're along 1958. There's spaces and places where that can be doing. So I'm working in a lot of those areas, and I believe that some of those types of resources, like how do we get something that is going to change the economic trajectory of our county, of our rural spaces, to a positive for our families to stay here in the future, not a drain where everybody has to leave in order to make a dollar, and then they come back when they're ready for retirement, or they come back when they can move with their kids and get back with the grandparents and take a giant pay cut in order to come to this area again, right?
Right. So advocating for issues and policies that affect rural communities, that's I think that's foremost on any caucus's role to do. But here in Virginia, rural counties are often called red counties because they overwhelmingly, over the last generations, have elected Republican candidates. And sometimes people forget that there are Democrats that live in these red areas. Yeah. And there are Democratic Party structures and groups. What do you see the role of the caucus being in terms of building an infrastructure or strengthening the existing Democratic Party infrastructure to make it easier to get candidates in front of voters and to make red voters feel safe voting blue now and then?
Sure. And very good question. I'll lead first with a hint of where I want to go. But I think a lot of that answer can be defined by the fact that we're in the coal fields, and that the United Mine Workers Association of America is the most storied, the most historic. I mean, they created organized labor.
My grandfather was a member of the UMW.
Yep. So and I think that it's important for people to understand the UMWA is the reason that we have an AFL-CIO. They're the reason that we have the 5-day work week, that child labor was outlawed, that we started to find that, oh, you can create a pension plan within your job. Oh, you can actually build healthcare provisions within your job. Like, this is the organization that actually embarked in all of those places, and their families put their lives on the line. Many of them were killed during the wars. There were many wars in the coal fields from the 1860s to the 1920s, and then the Pittston strike, is really the biggest piece that reminds everybody here. Outside interests were working with Richmond lobbyists and very wealthy people here in Southwest who were just determined that they were going to put another landfill on top of the Pittston mine site. The Moss 3 site was like, this is historic ground. This is where they stood their ground. This is where people, and they won. That's what's marvelous about them, is that they stood together. They supported each other. They had one of the longest strikes in the 20th century, late 20th century, and they won. And, that is the type of organization. These are the types of people that have the work ethic, that they're willing to put their lives on the line, and they do. And so anybody who wants to put a manufacturing facility in these areas or bring other types of sector size industry that are going to be scalable and going to be positive, producing something for the region and keeping dollars and keeping communities whole, like that's what's got to be going on. Okay. So, but the question is what about those counties? What about those districts that are just cast off because they're red, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, they're not. They are, everywhere you go is purple. It's just who's been voting the most because who's actually put up candidates. The Democratic Party abandoned the majority of our rural spaces 35 years ago and continue to do so very aggressively. And the coordinated campaign completely ignored all the plans. They had the nerve to call us and ask us to organize events, but then they pulled the events and moved them to other places because we have a lousy chair who gives lousy information and hates our candidate and played stupid personality politics. So Hashmi and Jones, when they came to the area, I had it set up to go into the Bristol Hotel so that all the people who were coming here to celebrate the 160th anniversary of the Lee Street Baptist Church, which is the largest, oldest Black church in Southwest, they were all coming that same day. We were going to invite all of them to cross the plaza. That's all. Just walk across the plaza. Come on in. Free food. Free beverages, cash bar, but an open space, and hang out with us for 2 hours because Hashmi's coming. She's doing 7 trips. She's stopping here, right? And she'll have Jones with her, and you'll be able to ask this candidate questions, right? So people were pretty interested. Now, we didn't invite all those people in advance because we knew that there was a high likelihood that the campaign was going to screw things up, and they did. They followed the bad advice of the Washington County chair, who moved the event to a Unitarian Universalist church 22 miles northeast on a Saturday night at 7 p.m. Like anybody from Bristol is going to drive there on a no. Are you going to get any elderly people from Bristol driving 22 miles and then having to come home? No. Are you going to get young people? No, they're already feeding their kids or they're partying, right? Or they're at their job. So what did we get? A room of 75 old white people that look like me, who always show up for every event in Abingdon, and I love them. I love them. But they were already going to vote for Hashmi and for Jones. These are not ambassadors. These are not people who want to have their questions answered. These are people who are just dying for an opportunity to be near something that they're positive about. And go ahead.
So you think, it sounds like you're saying that an organization like the Rural Caucus could be a strong factor in organizing events for candidates, both the House of Delegates and Senate level, but at the statewide level when they're visiting the area, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's what we wanted to get at here is, have you thought about any specifics for how you would organize that? Maybe you're thinking of centralizing some of that organizational structure in the caucus as opposed to the county chairs.
We are,
right,
and I think we would coordinate with the districts, right? So the county chairs and the county committees are also significantly dysfunctional in a number of our spaces down here, particularly in HD 44. Our experience was we got a little bit of help out of Bristol, and they're very nice, they're friendly. They wanted to help. They just don't have much, right? So we got some postcard campaigns. We got some signs put up. We got a few poll workers that we had to organize ourselves. The chair hadn't organized it. The night that we brought 27 people to their committee, and the chair was like, "Oh, and maybe we should think about starting to get some poll workers set up." Our volunteer commander, Jessica Watts is like amazing. So she's a kindergarten teacher, right? And so she is so organized. So she turned her house into a canvassing machine, right? So for months there were piles and stacks everywhere, for people to arrive. They would get their materials, they would get their training, they'd get their snack, they'd get their beverage, they'd get their buddy. She just was like, we already have that. And she just like passed the board over and oh wow, okay. Well, we should probably find out what times people are good. And Jessica's like, you just see this is, it's organized in a spreadsheet, and this is online, so this is in a Google folder, so everybody can take a peek. Nobody can edit it except for the 4 of us, but so that was our experience in Bristol. in Russell there was nothing. In fact, the chair there tried to dissuade our volunteers from doing canvassing because it was dangerous. And it's like these are women who, first of all, put up hundreds of Cindy Green signs, put them on their property, put them on their business property, put them all around town. They're not afraid of their neighbors. They know their neighbors. They just are going to go out and talk to people. The chair had the audacity to be like, well, it's dangerous. Come on. Right. Amazing. Yeah. So anyway, those committees need to all be heated up. They need to have youth. They need to have more participants. It's got to change. And we're working on that. We're working very hard to bring that.
So as the leader of the caucus, what specifically could you do within your possibility to do to strengthen the local parties throughout Virginia's rural areas?
I intend to spend my time visiting each and every one. It's going to be a huge task. I'm going to have to raise money for it, right? It's like because I don't expect to be getting any real support from the party. But we need to get together with people who have run, so former candidates like yourself. We need to have town halls in each one of these spaces, and it's important that we prioritize it from from a perspective of, have you received state support? If you've received any state support, you're going to be on the slow list because we've got to hit the people who have been completely abandoned. Yeah. We've got precincts out here. When Cindy and I were visiting all the precincts on election day, there were 4 precincts that weren't even owned by either Washington County or Bristol County, right? There were no poll workers. There were no signs. They've been completely forgotten because they weren't properly organized in the van. Yeah. And of course, the van system is broken as well. And access to the van system is broken. So I believe, here's what I think that the Rural Caucus ought to be doing. They ought to be developing a fantastic, simple, straightforward survey mechanism that we carry with ourselves. I am not going to push surveys on people. I'm going to carry them myself, and I'm going to ask people questions because I want to have personal interaction with these groups. I want to understand, what does your chair feel like? What does your treasurer feel like? What does your candidate who ran but failed feel like? What are the things that you really need the most? These are questions that need to be asked, and they need to be categorically documented. We need to be able to bring that type of data back in. And I want to train younger people and volunteers to do the same thing. It's not like I can personally visit, 100 locations in the space of 2 years, but we can certainly have field captains who are. And gathering this type of information is going to empower us. It'll help us to analyze what the common themes are, what the unique issues are, and where they are, right? And be able to form perspectives on what to advocate for when we have our 4 opportunities throughout the year to sit at the central steering committee and to be able to advocate. That's where we need to be advocating for the rural spaces. We need to be there. We'll be there with all the other HD committees, chairs, and we'll be there with the other caucus chairs. And that's where we need to express our voice and make our case for resources, for attention, for policy changes, right? None of that is occurring right now. What's occurring is, is just, it's nonsense. There's a whole bunch of hate and screwing around and like crazy posts on social media, and people think that this is like helping the party. It's like
I'll tell you
characters,
I'll tell you that when I ran for the state senate in the 4th district back in 2019, this was a very rural district, mostly northern neck, Hanover County, but it covers a lot of counties, right? Several counties, which means I was dealing with several different county committees. Right. And I'll tell you, the variance between the very good ones and the weaker ones was pretty wide. And a lot of that was about the size of the county and the number of Democrats in participation. But it sounds like I'm hearing you say that one of the things, and you mentioned this in a conversation we had earlier, Mike, one of the things that an organization like the Rural Caucus ought to be doing is providing that candidate training for people, not only recruiting candidates, right? But giving them the training. How do you sign up to run? How do you create one of these committees?
Completely.
and it sounds like you were, that retreat was supposed to be that, but they didn't really do it. And I kind of taught myself to do it. I got a lot of good training frankly, from the Senate caucus in the legislature, in the General Assembly, right?
Yeah.
So that was my first candidate training, and it sounds like the rural caucus should be doing some of that, right?
They claim to be. I haven't seen evidence of it actually having any effect. I hear them fluffing words. They speak about it verbally, but I haven't seen any documentation.
Okay.
It absolutely needs to be organized in a much more intentional and strategic capacity, so that when we're looking at the calendar and we're looking at the election cycles, that we know when we need to have the appropriate materials ready for different forms of training. Like, because a startup kit is going to be a lot different than on the fly kit, right? So okay, we're going to help you get set up. Here's your basic material. Also, and I believe firmly that at least at the congressional district level, each one, like CD9, and I've spoken with Rebecca about this, and she loves it. And I've spoken with Tracy Klotz about it, who ran her husband Eric Klotz's. She now joined us on the CD9. She was voted in last night. Yay. And, we want to create these practical toolkits. So, and I mean material as well. So if you want to, right now, every single candidate that is not fully supported by Virginia Dems, right, has no guidance on how do you get your swag? What is swag? How do I make my printer? How do I get my signs printed? How do I get my buttons made? How do I get T-shirts made? All of that ought to be consolidated. So we need a union, a quality union fulfillment house that the rural caucus and the district chairs ought to come together, understand what we need to build, and have material on hand so that it's ready to roll, so that we're not paying for premium prices. We're not paying for rush deals. We're just imprinting the variety of personal brands that each of them want. And frankly, we can also set up like 25 different Canva tools so that people can just, here's your access to free Canva. This is the way that you organize your content. Here are the templates. We'll build the templates and provide them to you. Adjust it however you want. You change your colors, change your fonts, but we have to give these types of toolkits to people, because most of, like when you talk to like Mark Downey, I mean, dude's a physician. He's not a designer. He's not going to put together. How is he supposed to put together, an advertising campaign? And frankly, Cindy knew that I had the background in advertising and production, and so, she was like, "Oh my God, I have to figure out how to do these billboards." I'm like, "No, you don't." I'm like, "Just give me that." And so we had within the space of a couple of weeks, we had 456,000 impressions weekly. In a district that only holds 170,000 residents, right? They were just really well placed, and there's a science to that. It's not a hard science, but it's a system that you need to understand. And then the county. So I did that for Cindy, and I wanted to do that for others. But then the county chair, the same one who moved the Hashmi event into a space where they wouldn't have any diversity, also he hired Rural Ground Game to produce 3 negative ads that were complete trash, and he spent $5,100 on it. Like, I know how much those things cost because I had them all. I had them all on hold, so that our opponent wouldn't get onto it. He flashes me this 8.5 by 11 crumpled, proof out of his inkjet proof out of his pocket, and it's just this like highlight yellow and black, all caps. It looks like some rant from some crazy person in 1994 on AOL, and I'm like, dude, what is that? And he's like, oh, this is because Israel's, it's to get them on the nukes. And I'm like, we don't want any negative advertising. We don't want to name our opponent. Both of those things are terrible. No. Are you thinking of putting those in the same corridor that we just built, positive messaging? And he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to put it right on him. And I'm like, you're going to put a drag on my candidate by doing that, because people are going to automatically assume that she's paying for that ad to go up there. No, it's paid for by this path.
So you're kind of going where I wanted to explore. And so the purpose of a Democratic caucus is to elect Democratic candidates. And in order to elect a Democrat, you have to have a Democrat on the ballot. And for the first time, historic event, there were Democrats for every state delegate office on the ballot in 2025.
Yep.
A lot of people are trying to take credit for that. It doesn't really matter. It happened. Okay. So the next thing you have to do is to support those candidates and help them run their campaign. And you've identified some really good things in terms of training and resources, toolkits that can help candidates. So my question now is, how do you convince voters to vote for Democrats in rural districts?
You just need to let them know they're here. I mean, oh my God. And I don't mean to oversimplify it or sound stupid, but I'll tell you, people were thrilled to meet Cindy. People were absolutely wide open. I mean, when we went up to the coal fields, right? We went up to work at a pantry where we had 300 vehicles waiting to have their donation food, provided to them. And Pastor Woody Scott was very generous, and he's like, look, you can walk the lines, you just can't do any politics in the door. And we're like, we don't want to, we just want to go and walk the cars. And so Cindy started at the back, I started at the front, and we each gave her pitch to every single vehicle in that line. It was like 8:00 in the morning in Castlewood. And there were multiple families in a lot of these vehicles, right? They're all getting into the one vehicle that they have enough gas money to be able to make it to the pantry, to get the food, to get home for the next 3.5 weeks, right? And it's a phenomenal operation. It's appalling that it needs to happen in a place that used to be solidly middle class and 100% deliverable on Democratic votes, until the Democrats abandoned them, and until the Democrats started sending horrible messaging out, like anti-coal messaging, and just ignoring the fact that they're insulting and hurting all the people in that county, not just the people that they believe are, the red county. It's like, it's terrible. And, like Lebanon and Russell County used to be solidly blue. This is a lot of the places down here could. So those families are still here. Those people are still here. They have not all died. Many of them are retired, but their families all know that story. So they were opening doors to us during canvassing. I'm positive that awareness is going to be one of the most important things. Changing the messaging and making sure that people are speaking positively to their communities, right? And listening to the community, right? We didn't prepare a speech to go before the UMWA's fish fry and talk in front of 300 people in their assembly hall. No, we met with Mr. Gibbs, we met with Mr. West, we met with a number of their folks to make sure that we understand what their most important priorities were. And it was clear. And that's what we spoke to. We spoke to the fact that they all know that coal is going to end. It's a finite resource, and it has its limited uses, right? It's also powered the world for the last 200 years. So they need, one, stop attacking our existing jobs, help us secure and save our existing jobs in coal, because they pay us well. They make us solidly middle class. Second, how are we going to transition to clean energy? What does that mean for our community? Mm-hmm. How do you propose to bring resources from the state to be able to help us? And then 3, we need new industry. We've got to have a new industry that's going to be here, that is durable, that serves the community, that can hold our families here together for generations, because that's what we all want. And, so in answer to that, housing. And I'll tell you what, I sat on a number of in a number of the meetings where they were planning the construction of a new advanced manufacturing modular home component facility in Lebanon. But they weren't sure where they were going to put it. They thought, do we put it in Washington County? Do we, they only have 4 counties they could choose from, because there was a grant that they were, being provided for the purchase of a facility. And so I'm not the reason, but I was definitely one of the voices that was like, you've got to put it in Russell County. You have to put it in Russell County. Like, these folks want this type of industry. They can help you design the facility. They can help you build the facility. They can help you supply you with incredibly dedicated workers who want the trainings that they're going to need for this new type of work. And then they can also form entrepreneurial companies to install these modular homes throughout our communities, right? And these aren't crappy, flimsy. This is for durable, foundation bound, modular housing, so that we can really address the fact that we all know through our Regional Workforce Housing Alliance that we have, through our market study, we know that we have over 5,000 home deficit from the number of homes that we currently need with our current population.
Housing is an issue across Virginia, particularly in rural areas, but also in urban areas. But I want to change direction here a little bit and do a little bit of time traveling. Okay. So we're going to time travel 2 years into the future. Mm-hmm. Mike, you've been the chair of the Rural Caucus for those 2 years. Mm-hmm. Looking back, how do you know you're successful? What are the measures of your success and the organization's success with you as a leader at the helm?
Got you. One, it's going to be recorded and it's going to be data. That data is going to show how many rural communities we've communicated with effectively. And by effectively, I mean we've listened, we've heard the voices of a few, we've returned, we've heard the voices of many, right? So it's not just a one and drop, right? You can't just like drop into a community, pop a survey, ask some questions and be like, we did it. It's got to be followed up. There's got to be consistency. We need to know that we are going to build out, and I believe in 2 years we will have built out a material process system, so that we have a simple online form where rural candidates, and I'm talking even people who might be running for county chair, that they want to put up some material. Great, come on in. You can buy from the shop. You can get your materials pulled together. You can get your digital. Here's your little Hootsuite. This is your Hootsuite. This is how you plan your social posts, right? This is how you utilize it. A little bit of training on that. These are all things. These are all toolkits that can be recorded and stored on a repository at CD9 or in the Rural Caucus, right? Depending on what the material is, it would vary. And number of volunteers and number of people joining committees. If I want to see a tripling of the number of people who are members of their local committees, they don't have to be executive, just be a member, because those members are the people we need to call on when we have elections. We need the poll workers, we need the canvassers, we need the sign pullers, we need the sign pushers, we need the folks who stand there with the signs, and it's imperative to have those types of numbers and build that community. You can't do it on a snap. You've got to do like we did, but it's super painful. It's like you got one day you have 17 people show up when you expected 10. Another day you have 2 show up when you expected 12. And that's not the people's fault. That's our fault for not being prepared and having a roster of people to draw upon. So I feel that those are a couple of the critical things that should show. I think another is that we need to develop a funding mechanism that we are in constant fundraising. We need to be a channel. We need to be an open channel to receive appropriate funds, and we need to be equitable in the distribution of those funds. And that's not just during elections. That's got to be during formative phase times, right? So if we're going to have regional retreats, which is the way that I would actually handle it, I would do a Zoom statewide retreat because it's a big state and it consumes a lot of people's resources and time to make the drives. But in each one of the congressional districts, we ought to be holding our own fundraising event, our own communicating event, our trainings in those spaces, right? And so I believe that some of that fundraising that we create ought to be reimbursing the expenses of that travel, of that accommodation, if it's necessary, certainly the meals, because some of our candidates, that are not flush. It's like,
Tell me about it. Yeah.
and this is right, and this is like a business investment. And if you were doing this for your job, you'd be getting your mileage back, right? You'd get paid for your gas, and this needs to happen. I experienced this when I was running the regional farmer suicide prevention program for the USDA across the Southeast. It went from like Texas to Virginia to Puerto Rico and Virgin Islands, and it's like there's the system that the USDA and the land grant university professors had put in place had absolutely zero recompense. There was no way for a poor rural farmer who comes to attend your event is getting compensated for their time away from their farm, their time that they're working for you, right? And the travel expenses. It's appalling, and it's baked into the grants, right? So there needed to be an external fundraising entity in a not-for-profit capacity that could then pay for those people to be able to make it to the event. Right. And it's just it's not that complicated. It's just that nobody has thought, oh gee, wow, it would be really equitable if we compensated all attendees of our events for those events, not charge them a rate. You need to be paying them to come. They're providing you their professional services, right? It may be a voluntary job, but they're taking their time away from their day job to come to your event. They're taking their time away from their family, their farm, their business, their weekend to come to your event. And so it just seems it's so turned upside down when the consultants who are running these meetings and are getting paid fat dollars to be able to facilitate these conversations and get some material out there. Like, oh, so they're making money off of all these poor people who are actually doing the work.
So you've mentioned some very great measurable indicators of success. But right now we're about a little bit more than a week away from the elections, the reorganization of the caucus, right?
Yeah.
And you're running for chair, and you have some competition, and we're going to be sharing this with all the members of the Rural Caucus. So here's your chance to give a 90-second pitch on why they should elect you, and where they can get more information and your contacts and your vitals and all that. Okay, ready, set, go.
All right. Well, I'm Mike McGirr. I live here in Bristol, Virginia. I'm the volunteer campaign manager who ran Cindy Green's run for HD 44 against Israel O'Quinn. We didn't win, but guess what? They haven't run a candidate here since 1911, right? So anyway, or 2011. All right. So after experiencing the exhilarating experience of Cindy's campaign and really seeing the inner workings of how the sausage is made, we need change. We can do better. There's no reason to be mad at people for not being great at what they do, but we need better. And the people that I'm working with comprise a group of people who can do it better. We're professionals from different types of the field. I bring a lot of marketing and advertising background. I bring agricultural and food systems background. I bring community organization and housing, into the equation. This is all work that I do across the state. I work with the Richmond Fed's Community Development Investment Training Program. I work with Virginia Housing on a number of projects. I work with the Regional Workforce Housing Alliance and the other housing alliances in the state in order to help to bring resources together. This is the type of organization and the type of outreach that I think that the Rural Caucus ought to be doing in an orchestrated, smart, transparent, honest way so that we can start raising money and giving money to candidates, not charging them. And we can do it internally. We do not need to hire outside consultants unless there's a specific need. Am I going to actually create the strategy to make the best rural route, to make the most efficient run for a whole bunch of listening sessions? Probably not. I'm probably going to hire a consultant specifically to the task, but I'm not going to just give all of the responsibility of the caucus over to an entity that's then going to in turn send a whole bunch of really weird invoices to the rural candidates that they didn't do any work for, or they're claiming that they did work for, and they're like, hey, file this in-kind contribution form right now on your election report. And I mean, that's just super shady. If they did the work, they should evidence the work. But they didn't attach any evidence to the work. They just said, oh, this is what we did. We need you to put $2,252 and something cents on your election report. All that's doing is padding their numbers for the future to be able to say, we did this much work with this many candidates. And it's like, if you did, then show the math. Anyway, so I believe that we need to have a lot more transparency. We need to have a much stronger communication stream. We need to be the ones who are telling the steering committee in Richmond what we want in rural Virginia, not what we are begging for, right? We need to go there. We need to bring the data. And with the data, we can advocate for the allocations that we know that they can give us. We just need to advocate for it professionally.
Right. That sounds like a great pitch to me, Mike. I think you have a lot of great ideas. And I look forward to seeing how this turns out. Do you have a website that we could share with viewers?
We do. You know, the easiest thing is on Facebook. It's Michael Ray, the number 4 VA.
Michael Ray, the number 4 VA.
Or VA.
Okay, on Facebook.
My full name is Michael Ray McGirr.
Gotcha.
And you know, there's been some baloney out there that I'm trying to be a fake Appalachian like JD Vance. Yeah. Go talk to my great grandma Viva Stewart, and yeah, you can ask that. My genetics are 100%. My parents fled Appalachia in 1959 as the first people who got a high school graduation, so that they could make the money and raise my sister and I all around the country. I chose to move back to Appalachia because I know that this is where I'm from, and I live here, and I move here purposely because I want to live out my days.
Yeah, well, I think, this has been a great wide-ranging discussion, folks, and we really appreciate you joining us, Mike. I think there's a lot of other topics to touch on with respect to elections in rural areas and Democrats and the issues. I think a lot of people, when they hear the word rural, they think of flat farmland, right? And streams and tractors and all that. But Southwest Virginia, especially, it's pretty hilly. It's mountainous in some places, and coal is a big deal out there. Coal is a big deal. It's a bigger deal than farming in some places, and I think Democrats need to remember that and keep that in mind when we talk about policy. Because I think you made a good point earlier about these coal miners who they understand that extraction industry is almost over for a couple of different reasons. But they also need to have replacement jobs so their kids don't have to move somewhere else to make a living, right? They can finish high school there. They can go to college at Virginia Tech, and then they can come back there and do the modular home manufacturing or whatever. So again, we really appreciate you being on today. It's been a very interesting and enlightening conversation for me. And I think once the election's over after December, maybe sometime in the new year, whether you win or lose, we'd love to have you back on to talk about these issues further, right?
Right on.
And talk about, because I appreciate that. We've got congressional elections coming up next year, CD9. We don't know what they're going to look like now. They may be redistricted. I've seen one redistricting plan that basically had everything west of Charlottesville was one red district. Yeah. And everything else was like a stripe going diagonally across Virginia. Every one of them has a piece of Richmond or Charlottesville in it. Yeah.
We'll see where we get with that. But, I appreciate the continuity, the request for continuity, because when this is the way that we left it, and maybe the best way to close is like when we were in the same space with the leadership of the UMWA here, the question was like, well, what are you going to do if you don't win? And Cindy and I both just started laughing, and they're like, well, what? She's like, we're just getting started.
Yeah.
And I'm like, seriously, we're just getting started. We're building benches for county committees. We are building relationships with other counties to help them do the same thing. And we're just going to keep moving through. We've brought up a new bench for our city council, for our school board. We've got people already prepped and already organizing so that they can run for those very local offices that are critical, because there just hasn't been enough competition. So this is just going to keep going, keep going, keep going. This is not a nascent bit. And if I don't win the chair of the rural caucus, I'm still going to advocate for all of these policies to be in, because I'm a member. I'm a member of CD9, and we are going to improve this party. We just hope we can do it easily and not have to struggle.
I think I ran initially in 2019 for this reason. I think a lot of us forget. A lot of Democrats at the higher levels, in the DPVA, don't understand that running Democratic Party candidates in these red districts is a great way to build the party. Absolutely. It's a great way to demonstrate that there are Democrats in these areas who want change. They want representation in the General Assembly and the city councils, on the boards of supervisors, and we can't reach out to Democrats and build that party infrastructure in these red spaces unless we have candidates that are going out there and talking to people. Even some of these hard discussions, like your initial discussions with the coal miners, must have been a little bit tricky, right?
Yeah. So, it was a little scary at first, but the minute that we connected, and it's like, oh no, we're 100% union. We're 100% repeal right to work. Eyes open and ears opened, and we're like, what are your priorities? And they're like, you tell us. And I'm like, we're here to listen, dude. Like, we want to hear from you first. We're not here to tell you what our ideas are for you. We're here to hear what your needs are, and then how we would respond to that. Because
that's a key piece. Listening. Right.
And I do this each time that I usually say, we need to walk into the room with our ears open and our mouths closed. Yeah. And that's how you respectfully enter a space and respectfully enter a community. You have to just open your ears, everybody. Shut your trap.
Right.
All right.
Well, this has been a great conversation. We're going a little bit long. Scott, you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think Virginia's at a place where the rural areas can contribute a lot to the leadership of the state. And I think we saw it in this last election, beginning with having Democrats on the ballot everywhere. Yep. I think that in part explains how Abigail Spanberger won by such a large margin, is because these candidates harvested votes in areas that votes may not have been cast previously for Democrats. But having said that, and having been part of that process, there's a lot of things that can be done to improve the quality of the candidates, the resources available to them, and the overall strategy and appeal to voters. So I'm really hopeful that the rural caucus, with you or someone else at the helm, will be able to start zeroing in and focusing and turning these red areas friendlier to blue initially, and then turning them where they don't have a problem electing a Democratic representative in their area. So good luck. And thank you for stepping up and offering your leadership to get us to that point. It's a very important role. And thank you for taking the time to visit with us today.
Well said, Scott. Really appreciate you joining us, Mike. Folks, we're going to continue having conversations like this with local officials. We want to dig deep into Virginia politics from time to time. And I think this is a great way to do that, to talk to these caucus chairs, talk about to the folks who are running for the leadership of these chairs, trying to dig into these red spaces and what Democratic politics looks like there. And Mike, you're a great resource for that. So we appreciate you joining. If you're listening, if you're watching, hit the subscribe button. You can find us at www.foggybottomline.com. We're on YouTube at Foggy Bottom Line Media. The other social medias, TikTok, Insta, at Foggy Bottom Line. and we're on Patreon now and Apple Podcasts. So we're all over social media. We'd love to hear your comments. Tell us what you think. You can send an email through the website. You can comment on the YouTube or on one of the other social media platforms. Let us know what you think about this show. Hit subscribe and comment. We want to juice that algorithm, and we want to get the word out to folks. Share this with people who you think you might be interested in. Mike, I know you will, and we will too. So take care of yourself. Good luck next week. And I'm a member of the Rural Caucus myself, so I will be on the call on Tuesday night. Okay, and we'll see you soon, and we'll have you back.
Call with the pre-election on the 9th, and then on the 13th,
That's right.
The ballot will be distributed by the Department of Elections. Victoria Morales herself will be distributing that to all the members, and within a few hours, we'll know who won.
I'm glad you said that, because I made a mistake. I should have made sure everyone understood that. There's a membership meeting on Tuesday evening, the 9th at 7 p.m. I think that'll be by Zoom. And then the election will be on Saturday, the 13th. I think it starts at 10 a.m.
Yes.
There will be a short meeting to show people how to vote. And then the ballots will be distributed.
Each of the candidates will get 2 minutes. So there are 10 candidates. Or 10 positions. So we'll see how many candidates there are and how they organize that. But
And also, just so you viewers know, I've invited Roberta Thacker Oliver, who is the current chair, and she's also running as the incumbent to keep the seat. I've invited her to be on. So if she accepts that invitation, we'll have her on next week before the election. If she doesn't, we'll let you know that too. But in fairness, we wanted to make sure that both Mike and Roberta had a chance to speak to this so far very small audience. But Mike, I know you're a great speaker. You did a great job. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you're going to help us build this, and we want to help you build the Democratic Party out in the western part of Virginia. So let us know how we can help you do that. Okay?
Right on.
All right. Take care, everybody. This is Stan Scott and Scott Konopasek and Mike McGirr. I already forgot. McGirr.
Either way.
This is Stan Scott with Foggy Bottom Line Media, along with Scott Konopasek and our very special guest, Mike McGirr, who is running for the Rural Caucus chair for the Democratic Party of Virginia next week. We'll see you guys next week, maybe with Roberta, his opponent, maybe not, but we'll be back either way. And Scott, take care of yourself. You guys all both have a great weekend. Have a great evening. And we'll see everyone soon. Take care, guys. Carry on.
Carry on.
This is Stan Scott with Foggy Bottom Line Media out here.